The first round of the NFL draft is officially in the books. And while we expected chaos, and certainly we did eventually get chaos, the first 7 picks I'd say were expected and or at least not surprising. But then we got to the infamous 8th pick, and believe me, folks, Ed and I have plenty to say about that. I'm David Street, and this is Total Sports Talk. What's up, everybody? Once again, welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. As always, I'm David Street, and this is my co-host, Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
Thank you. And as I'm sure you guys noticed, our other co-host, Matthew Raridan, is not with us right now. He and his lovely wife are dealing with things regarding their unborn child. So honestly, it might be a while until Matthew comes back. We'll see, but certainly we wish the best for him and everybody involved. But as always, the show must go on, and Matthew would certainly agree with that. Listen, Ed, there's plenty to talk about regarding the first round of the draft, and certainly we will get there. But honestly, we really need to address the elephant in the room here, okay? Because the Atlanta Falcons, so they invest in Kirk Cousins with one of the largest contracts, one of the largest quarterback contracts in NFL history. So you think surely there's no way in hell the Falcons are going to draft a quarterback, not with their first overall pick at least. But then you remember, oh yeah, they're the Falcons, right? Excuse me. And what do? They draft Michael Penix Jr., a guy who was not even close to being projected as the 8th overall pick. In fact, I don't think he was even projected until at least, mid first round or late first round. Certainly not top 10. And listen, this is obviously not a knock against Michael Penix at all. And as you guys may know, I'm personally a big fan of Penix, him being from Tampa and all. But this was such an all-time disaster move by the Atlanta Falcons, that especially because they need help on defense. More specifically, they need help on pass rush. Dallas Turner was right there for the taking. How the hell do you not go for him? I just, Ed, the simplest way that I can sum this up is the Falcons falconed.
Yeah, and we talked going into the draft. How are the Cardinals going to Cardinal? How are the Panthers going to Panther? And lo and behold, the Falcons went and falconed. It was just stunning to watch that take place. The announcement, everything just kind of really smelled like Dallas Turner, something defensive, something to at least give Kirk Cousins some help. Yes, they have a lot of weapons on offense. Who couldn't use more weapons, though? Who couldn't use more offensive line help? Who couldn't use more defensive line help? You gave that much money to Kirk Cousins, guaranteed for it to be on your roster for at least 3 years, and then immediately turn around and pick his replacement? What are we doing, people? This was stunning. And all levels.
Yeah, just real quick, not to mention, apparently, from my understanding, Kirk Cousins behind the scenes was pissed at the Falcons for doing this. It's like, well, then, what the hell did you give me all that money for in the first place?
You know what? He can be mad all he wants. As long as the check doesn't bounce, he's good, right?
Okay, that's fair.
And you know what? Kirk Cousins, at this point, he's probably doing some retail therapy at Kohl's somewhere. It's just what he does. Now, yes, Michael Penix needs to be developed. Yes, we need to make sure that his body can physically hang with the NFL. So there is some kind of wait and see with him that being behind Kirk Cousins will help. But this soon after you just signed Kirk Cousins, I that's the part that is baffling to everybody, not just me, but everybody.
And also,
And
how old is Michael Penix going to be by the time Kirk Cousins' contract is done? 27, 28? He's going to be up there in age.
which is what used to be prime age for quarterbacks, where they really have been on the field long enough to seen everything as far as coverages, as far as checks, as far as uh, audibling everything that you need to do in an offense, and that's just when he's going to get on the field. That makes zero sense whatsoever. Now, yes, the Falcons did talk to Kirk Cousins before the draft and said, look, if we see a guy in the next couple of years that we think is going to be our future beyond you, we're going to go ahead and take him. We need you to be okay with that. And Kirk Cousins was like, sure, no problem. Never thinking that it was going to be this quickly. That he was thinking maybe next year, where you get a developmental quarterback. You know, you would expect to be later in the first round because you are expecting the Falcons to be better this year. This was not in the cards whatsoever. And it's just baffling to anybody that has any kind of sense of what the NFL is about.
Yeah, absolutely. But as I said before, it wasn't certainly at least the first seven picks were expected, or at the very least, not surprising, right? Ed, Caleb Williams goes number one to the Bears. Everybody expected that. Jaden Daniels number two to the Commanders. Personally, I thought Drake May was going to go there. I know I said before what I said before about JJ McCarthy, like being number two, but what I said was don't be surprised if that happens. It shouldn't happen, but don't be surprised. But I thought Drake May was going to go number two, but certainly Jaden Daniels is not surprising in the very least. Really, like if you think about it, the first three picks were pretty much all chalk. I mean, these were the guys that people expected to be drafted, and that's exactly what happened.
And if you go even further, it was basically chalk all the way up until we got to Atlanta. Because
Right?
you look at number 4 going to the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., Maserati Marv. And you had Joe Alt go to the Chargers, giving Justin Herbert at least a half a second more to get a throw off. I mean, that was very much expected all the way until we got to that point. Most of the first round, we saw a lot of chalk, maybe not in the names, but in what the needs were across the board. So it was chaos, but it was a bit controlled chaos, if you will, uh, as we get down the list of teams that drafted. And yes, there's going to be some hits, there's going to be some misses, and we'll get to those here in a second.
Well, I don't know about you, Ed, but low key, I was actually kind of happy that the Falcons took Michael Penix, that they made that pick because it made me think, finally, we have something good to talk about tomorrow. but But certainly you are right, Ed. There are winners and there are losers, and I want to start off. And I kind of want to hit home a little bit, and I think the Bucks were massive winners in the first round because they made investments in Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Ryan Jensen, center, recently retired, so that's a massive hole that you need to fill. And they went and filled it with Graham Barton, center out of Duke. Now, personally, I wanted Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Now, did I want him in part because he might have the most badass name in the draft? Maybe, but make no mistake, Graham Barton may not win the naming contest, but this dude was an absolute mauler at Duke and was a big reason, if not the biggest reason, why Duke had one of the best offensive lines in the ACC and in the country. So kudos to the Bucks here. But Ed, what are some other winners you see as far as teams that won, as far as players who won? What else do you see?
Well, low hanging fruit, the Bears won. Me being a Packers fan, that just tastes like pure vinegar coming out of my mouth. But they did what they needed to do. They've got a number one wide receiver. They went and got him a second wide receiver that can develop into a number one wide receiver over the next couple of years. And they went and got Caleb Williams, which we all knew was going to happen. It's like you said, it was chalk for that to occur. But you take everything that the Bears organization has done as a whole over this offseason, they've gotten better. And I'm not saying that they have gotten to where they are going to take over the NFC North right away from the Lions and the Packers, but they're a threat. And depending on how Caleb Williams develops as an NFL player, not just a college player with some quirky nail polish and lip gloss, uh, in his public appearances, how he develops his chemistry in the locker room with his players, because this is going to be his team right from the get-go. There's not going to be any development for him. He is expected to be on the field day one, and we'll see how that goes.
Are there any individual players that you think were the winners of the draft of the first
100%
round?
Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is probably going to be your number one fantasy pick out of nowhere this upcoming year,
And he got drafted
because
to Kansas City, right?
Kansas City Chiefs
Of
traded
course he
up
did.
to the Bills. One of these weird things that happened, the Bills wound up trading out of the first round to get draft capital, like we had talked about on previous episodes. Well, the Chiefs went and got Xavier Worthy. We don't know what's going to happen with the Rasheed Rice situation. When uh, Patrick Mahomes was most effective when he had uh, that burner on the outside. Well, guess what? He has again. He's got a burner on the outside, and it's it's just going to open up the playbook even more than what Andy Reid had before, and what Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to do with that special weapon on the outside, instead of dinking and dunking his way down the field, because that was one thing that you definitely saw uh, after the trade that got. Forgive me, the name is. I'm missing the name right now. We all know who I'm talking about. The speed guy that went to Miami.
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill. Sorry. Tyreek Hill. When Tyreek Hill left Kansas City, that was a part of the passing game that went away, because the guys that Kansas City could get in his place couldn't catch the ball to save their life. Well, Xavier Worthy can catch the ball, and he can outrun pretty much any secondary in the NFL already. So you add him to the two-time defending champions, this is going to be a scary offense to look at in this next season. So look out for fantasy points.
I can't argue against you, Ed. And the Kansas City Chiefs are pretty much the living embodiment of that one famous movie scene where the guy goes, "He can't keep getting away with this." This or it. You know what I mean. You know, before I mentioned Dallas Turner, projected to be a top 10 pick, but gets picked 17th to the Minnesota Vikings. Ed, is Dallas Turner the biggest steal of the first round?
Quite possibly, because you take a look at how long it took for any defensive player to come off the board. There are plenty of defensive players, including Dallas Turner, that were projected way before some of these offensive players that did get drafted ahead of him was supposed to go. Dallas Turner, like you said, should have gone to the Falcons, but he didn't. He waited another 9 picks before he found a home. And if you can get that top end of talent that far back, that is value that is just unbelievable to get in the first round.
Yeah, no doubt. But as far as individuals go, Ed, like you mentioned an individual winner, I want to mention an individual loser. And to me, that's Brock Bowers. Um, Nothing against him whatsoever, but he gets drafted to the Raiders. Who the hell is going to throw him the ball? Now, Brock Bowers is probably good enough to you,
I'll throw it.
you.
I'll throw it.
Now, listen, I think Brock Bowers is certainly good enough to be a kind of player where he can elevate any quarterback, um, around him. But again, I'm looking at the situation he's in Las Vegas, and I'm just wondering, again, like who the heck is going to throw this guy the ball, right?
I don't even know who the quarterback is for the Raiders at this point.
Exactly.
I mean, do they? The question then becomes: are they expecting one of these value pick quarterbacks to come in and start? Do they expect to be able to use some of the draft picks that they make and then try and trade for a quarterback that's just kind of floating out there, or sign somebody off the street that doesn't have a home yet? Is that what we're talking about? And by the way, it's Gardner Minshew. That's the quarterback for the Raiders this year. So, not Gardner Minshew just about got the Colts to the playoffs. So he can throw the ball. He's just not a consistent enough top end quarterback to really move the needle for most anybody looking at Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams getting them the ball down the field. He just isn't. But he is going to be serviceable for at least this year, going into next season when you have the likes of Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers going to be available in the draft, or a slew of other quarterbacks that are going to be available in the draft. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. We'll just see how well they can keep that core of players together to get to that next quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just want to mention one more individual winner before we get to some more losers here. But I cannot go this episode without mentioning a guy who played for my college team, and that's Ricky Pearsall. I don't think anybody expected Ricky Pearsall to go in the first round. Not even late first round. I think the best for him was second round, like in the mid 30s or 40, early 40s, somewhere like that. But hey, you know what? All the kudos in the world to Ricky Pearsall. I mean, his first year at Florida, he transferred to Florida from Arizona State. First year, he wasn't projected to go until the third or fourth round. I think it was the third round, if I remember correctly. But the guy bet on himself. He came back to Florida. Overall, he had a really good career with us. Killed it at the combine. Saw his draft stock rise up, and look at that. He's now a first rounder. But it's not all winners, Ed. It's also losers here. And we mentioned the Falcons, Ed, and like they are the biggest losers of the draft. I mean, we're kind of like already beating up on someone who's already dead here, but they are the biggest losers, and I don't think anybody else, certainly not any other team, is close to them as the biggest losers, right?
No, no, not that bad. There's some questionable picks out there, and I'm gonna point out Denver. They just traded for a quarterback. Why would they use their first pick on Bo Nix? I don't understand. And in the same vein as I don't understand the Kirk Cousins thing. You get Zach Wilson, which yes, we know Zach Wilson has not been developed to be at a dare I say, Kirk Cousins level, but he's at least a starting quarterback in this league, and you immediately draft a quarterback that you're expecting to be at his same level or maybe even above by the end of the year. Why would you make that trade if that's what you were going to do to begin with? That it is that just so they could fight it out in training camp? Are they expecting this to be like a Dak Prescott situation where where Bo Nix wins the starting job in training camp, or Russell Wilson wins the starting job over Matt Flynn after Matt Flynn took the bag? I don't know, but it did not make as much sense to me as going and getting those other pieces because that roster is depleted. That roster needs help, and getting another quarterback after you just traded for one that is going to be unquestionably the starter just didn't make any sense to me.
Well, it seems to me what the Broncos are trying to go for is they basically view Zach Wilson as the veteran quarterback who can take the rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, under his wings. But no offense to Zach Wilson, but he's not exactly the best veteran quarterback to learn under because he's not good. Okay, like he's just he sucks.
You know, he's not that terrible. He's I would definitely put him in the lower third of starting quarterbacks in this league easily. But I'm not going to say that he is, outright trash. He does have some good arm talent. He can maneuver and some offense. There are things about him to like, but he's not going to be a quarterback that can do well enough and then basically show professionalism to a quarterback that may already have more professionalism than he does coming into the league, with Bo Nix. And Sean Payton, I think, looks at Bo Nix as a Drew Brees type. And we all saw what happened with Sean Payton and Drew Brees kind of growing together in New Orleans. If that is what Sean Payton believed to begin with, that's why I'm questioning this whole. You either did one thing wrong or you did the other thing wrong. You either made the trade to get Zach Wilson or you made the pick to get Bo Nix. One of those things was wrong. This isn't a two things can be true at once. One of them was wrong, and we need to figure out which one.
Well, speaking of wrong, I think there were some things that we were right and that we were wrong about. But I want to jump right into where we were wrong, and I'll go first. I was wrong about Michael Penix. I mean, I said that Michael Penix was going to be the one dude who gets drafted like way later than he's projected to be, and that was mainly due to his injury history. And I think certainly where I was wrong was, I did not expect him to be a top 10 pick, let alone the eighth overall pick. So that's where I was wrong about Michael Penix and his draft position.
Where I was wrong is where how early all these quarterbacks were going to get taken. There were so many question marks around Bo Nix, around Michael Penix Jr., hell, even around JJ McCarthy. But we all saw what teams do. They reach as much as they possibly can to get a quarterback, and that is exactly what we saw. I didn't think they were going to get those Michael Penix or Bo Nix were going to get drafted before pick 16 with Seattle. That would have been the best case scenario for either one of them. No chance that they would have gone in the first 13 picks.
Yeah.
So that is where I was definitely wrong. I thought we'd also see more defense, more outside playmakers, but everything really was offense, and it was more interior than it was the outside uh, as far as headlines go in the first round.
Yeah, this was. I think in fairness, I think heading into the first round, heading into the draft, I think most of us expected to be a pretty offense heavy draft. But what was it? The first 14 picks were offensive picks.
First 14 and 23 of 32 picks overall.
That's insane. Like, is that an NFL? Is that a first round record for highest percentage of offensive players taken? I feel like it has to be.
Percentage, I don't know, but that is definitely the longest streak of offensive players being taken.
Gotcha. And then who was? I'm drawing a blank. Who was the first defensive player taken overall?
The first defensive player taken overall, that was Latu out of UCLA.
What do we think of that? I think certainly Latu has the tools and capabilities of being a great NFL player. But Ed, as we all know, the biggest issue with him by far, like this dude, not only had medical issues, he not only had health issues, but wasn't he quite literally told to where was he before UCLA? Washington. Uh,
I think so. Uh,
well, what Yeah, wherever he was at before UCLA. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but didn't that school quite literally tell Latu that he needed to medically retire?
yes, he was medically retired, came back, played 2 years for UCLA without getting injured, and here he is, the first pick first defensive pick in the NFL draft.
I mean, listen, kudos to him. I mean, the fact that if you're told that you need to medically retire, but then you come back and you're the first offensive player taken, I mean, kudos to you. But this this is a really high risk. I feel like this is a really high risk, high reward kind of pick, Ed. Right? Because if
Mhm.
everything goes well, you look like a genius. But then again, you can't ignore the medical history here, right?
Yeah, and isn't that the definition of a reach? You know,
Yeah, for sure.
you're taking a player in a position that he shouldn't be taken to show that you know he is supposed to be better than everybody else. Because at that point, and not to overstate it, he was the first defensive player to be taken. That is above Byron Murphy, Dallas Turner, uh, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson, Quinion Mitchell. Those were the next players taken off the board on the defensive side of the ball. The Colts could have had any one of those, and they took this guy that was medically retired just just before 2 seasons ago. It's it is kudos to Latu for doing that, but it's also a know eek thing as a Colts fan. Will he be able to sustain? That's going to be the biggest question of all.
Yeah, definitely. And I think based on what we've been talking about, I think we all thought that Dallas Turner was going to be the first defensive player taken, but
Mhm.
obviously, that did not happen. But overall, to sum it up, there was definitely chaos in the draft, but there was also some chalk picks as well. But Ed, I want to shift to another topic here, and I want to get into the NBA playoffs, right? There's three, we're going to be talking about three series matchups here. And first things first is that I want to talk about the Lakers and the Nuggets. Okay, right now the Nuggets have the Lakers in a 3-0 stranglehold. And this is like what, the 11th, maybe 12th straight win that the Nuggets have over the Lakers. We know that they had a lot of wins over the Lakers at this point, like a lot of, wins in a row. And when you look at the stats from game 3, in my opinion, Ed, the Lakers didn't even play that bad. I mean, their 3-point shooting was garbage, but beyond that, I thought they played well enough to at least win the game. But the problem is Jokic, who is a problem. I mean, the Lakers cannot do anything to figure this guy out, and really beyond Jokic, I mean, yes, the Nuggets overall do have a more talented roster than the Lakers do, because the Lakers, just who they have. They have LeBron, 80, and then just a bunch of helpers, right? So the Lakers are less talented than the Nuggets, but when you lose 10 plus in a row to the same team, at this point, Ed, it's not just a talent issue. This is a mental issue. Like, this is a psychological issue that we're talking about here.
Yeah, and not only are the Lakers really beating their head against the wall trying to figure out a way to get past the Nuggets in one game finally. I also think of the Stars against the Knights. Oh my goodness, in the hockey playoffs. You they can't figure out a way to get past them. And the Lakers looked gassed mentally by the end of that game. They were dribbling out of bounds. They were, you know, droopy body language. They were just not, not able to match the energy that the Nuggets could when we got to the fourth quarter of that game. Whatever the Lakers did to try and close the gap, which maintained around a 9 point differential, whatever the Lakers did to try and get closer, the Nuggets would answer right back. And they even tried some different tactics this time. They even tried the hack a Shack against Jokic this time. Didn't work. Uh, Aaron Gordon was able to, uh, get some backside dunks just to break down the pick and roll that Jokic has been running. So those are things that the Lakers could not mentally keep up with, but the Nuggets were able to continue to pile on and just basically cruise to the end of this game. And at this point, I think the Lakers are cooked. There's not really much of a shot of them coming back and winning four straight against a team that basically has them in the headlock and giving them noogies for three games. It's just not
Well,
a thing.
let's also, I mean, if you didn't know this, Ed, no team in NBA history has ever won a series after being down 3-0, and certainly it sure as hell is not going to be the Lakers. And then let's also talk about the fact that it's not like the Nuggets have just been utterly destroying the Lakers. I mean, game one, the Lakers were up by double digits. Game two, they were up by 20 points. And then game three, as I said, I felt like the Lakers played well enough to, win the game. In my opinion, I think in some ways, losing in this fashion is even worse than just getting utterly demolished, because like if you're getting just outright destroyed, outright demolished, I mean, like that's one thing. But then in the other scenario, I would argue that's worse, because like we had them. We were up by double digits. We know we can beat them, but we just keep falling apart.
Yeah, and that's a continuous issue with, the age of your biggest stars for the Lakers. I mean, let me ask you this question, and this may go, spiral into a longer topic, but is LeBron really the face of the NBA at this point?
I mean, if we're just talking about from a pure playing standpoint, no. I mean, I think at this point it has to be Jokic. I know there will be people who argue against that just because Jokic is boring, but I don't really give a shit. Okay, if we're talking about pure playing abilities, Ed, then I mean LeBron is still performing at an excellent level, especially for a guy who's almost 40. But at this point, no, I don't think he's the face of the NBA anymore. I think it is Jokic, or it has to
Yeah.
be.
Well, you've got Jokic, you got Luka. I mean, the faces of the NBA are, European players. The foreign-born players that are coming in and just taking the league by storm. Yes, you have your Embiids, you have your Brunsons. You've got KD still out there. You've got Steph Curry still out there. But Curry and KD, those are aging players too. These players are aging out of being a face of a sport that is continuously trying to get younger, and it is getting to be that time where, yes, LeBron has been the face of the NBA for 20 years now, but it is time to pass the torch. You can't be in a press conference and walk out because you're upset. You can't be a bad leader. You can't pout and expect to be the upstanding face of an organization that is trying to be a global unit and get people from all over the world to watch your product. That is not a face of that organization, in my opinion. There is some professionalism that needs to happen. And is Jokic quirky? Absolutely. It's kind of charming, actually. But when you, I would rather take the charming, this is him being himself versus this is him trying to be a brand type of guy. And I think Jokic and Luka are the main faces of the league right now because of that.
One of my favorite Jokic moments happened when the Nuggets won the NBA Finals last year, and during the post-game press conference, there was a reporter who asked Jokic if he was gonna, go. I don't know if he asked if he was gonna go to the parade or like he was asked some question about the parade, and Jokic turns around and goes, "When is parade?" And then he's told the answer, and he's like, "No, I need to go home." And then what happened? He went to the parade. We all knew he went. We all knew he
Yeah.
was going to go to the parade, right? But another thing about LeBron too, Ed, is that I feel like in a way there's a bit of insanity going on here with LeBron because if you look at LeBron, and I'm going to try to communicate this as precisely as I can, but if you look at LeBron throughout his career, he kind of has a tendency of, I don't want to say carrying scrubs, but like a lot of teams, a lot of his teammates, a lot of the players that he played with weren't exactly Hall of Fame players. I mean, you look at that Cavs team that he took to the finals. This was during LeBron's first stint in Cleveland. You look at that Cavs team he took to the finals. They had no business being in the finals whatsoever. I mean, is it any wonder they got swept by the San Antonio Spurs? But but then you also but then you also, I mean, as I said, like he has a history of carrying teammates who, like I said, are not exactly Hall of Fame players. I mean, you look at that Cleveland Cavaliers team, they were down 3-1. No disrespect to everybody not named LeBron, but without LeBron, there's no way in hell they overcome a 3-1 deficit. I mean, LeBron just went absolutely Herculean, if that's how you Herculean against the Golden State Warriors to give the Cavaliers their first NBA championship. But that was a while ago. And what I'm trying to say here, Ed, is that it feels like at this point people are still expecting LeBron to be the same old this well, yeah, in a way, same old LeBron who can just will anybody to a championship or a deep playoff run. They still expect that from him, but at this point, like, you just can't expect that anymore. Am I making any sense here?
I I get I'm picking up what you're putting down. With LeBron, the way that he plays the game and the way that he interacts with other people on the court, he still interacts with referees and media and people that are on the court in a certain way and has for the time that he's been in the NBA. But his level of play has, while still right up there, it has diminished a little bit, but the the polish is worn off. We've seen it so long. It's become mundane to see him, whine at an official to kick a spectator out of the arena because they were verbally abusing him. You know what? You're a professional basketball player. Take it. That's that's my answer to that one. Uh, he has gotten more and more moody and ornery and more sucked into being a brand than being a basketball player, like I said before. And that has really kind of rubbed a lot of NBA fans the wrong way. It has actually turned a lot of people away from the NBA. Every sports league has had an increase in viewership of their playoffs over the past year, except the NBA, which has been down 17%. That I think is an effect of these players that are following LeBron's lead of being a brand more than a player, and it is really, you know, it has really become a sore subject for a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. But LeBron's not the only player. The Lakers and the Nuggets are not the only teams. Let's go to the Knicks and the 76ers, right? The Knicks had a 2-0 series lead, and then the 76ers were able to not go down 3-0 on the strength of Joel Embiid's 50 points.
Yeah, and they're lucky they got the 50 points, because there was a moment in the first half where it was very close to him being ejected for a flagrant two. He had pulled down an Anunoby uh, down to the floor using his leg, which is not a basketball move. It is not safe move. It is a move that could easily taken him out by ejection, and therefore taken his team out of the playoffs. At least now, with him dropping that 50 points last night, they are keeping they are staying in this at least for one more game. If the Knicks win the next game, then you could pretty much say goodbye. But if the 76ers are able to do the sweep at home, then it becomes a whole new series, best 2 out of 3. And quite frankly, that is going to make this a much more entertaining series than what we had anticipated, considering Embiid was hobbling down the court during game 2.
So if the Knicks win and they go up 3-1, Ed, I mean, teams have never overcome a 3-0 deficit, but they have overcome a 3-1 deficit. I just recently talked about the Cavs being down 3-1 to the Warriors in the finals. But if the 76ers go down 3-1, do you think they could come back? Do you see them making a comeback? No? Okay.
No, there's too much talent that can spread the ball around for the Knicks right now that can't for the 76ers. It all rests on Embiid. And yes, he gets a little bit of help, but it's not a type of help that is going to be the same as 4 players scoring double digits, double figures, versus just Embiid scoring 50 points a game, and hopefully everybody else can pick up their slack.
Yeah, and I think certainly as great as Embiid is, I don't think he's good enough to like put on a LeBron esque, performance where he just goes Super Saiyan, he just goes off. Great player, but I don't think he's good enough to be that kind of player for the 76ers. But I could be wrong, and that could happen. We'll see.
Yeah,
Um,
and just to the point of the way the 76ers are built, Embiid is the only NBA MVP that has never been to a conference final. If you think
really,
about that for a second, that
like
is an insane
the only one right now, or all time.
all time,
Jeez,
all time. The only MVP that has never been to a conference finals. And
wow.
that is an organization that is just saying, okay, all right, let's go. Let's go win us a ball game. And they're only talking to one guy. that's that's essentially what that comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah, that's crazy. And but also, what's also really crazy is that, and I could have my history wrong here, but I think it was 2019, the second round. I think the Sixers were playing the Raptors, and then it was Game 7, and the Sixers, I think, were like mere seconds away from going to the Eastern Conference Finals until Kawhi Leonard hit that miracle shot.
Yep. That was the closest he got.
Yeah, that's great. That's crazy. But speaking of crazy, like what's crazy is the manner and how the Orlando Magic won. And a display of total offensive domination after the offense was nowhere to be found in the first two games, right? But we found a way. I mean, let me read off some numbers here. Paolo Banchero had 31 points, 14 boards, and 6 assists in less than 30 minutes, and I believe he was the youngest player to ever achieve those numbers in less than 30 minutes. Jalen Suggs had a great game as well, 24 points on an efficient 9 of 11 shooting. But really, in my opinion, you know, what really helped the Magic a lot was the reemergence of Cole Anthony. And I talked about how Cole Anthony, first two games, he was absolutely terrible. Didn't make a single field goal his first two games. But then in the third game, 10 points, 4 of 7 shooting. I mean, what a statement the Magic won. We were up by as many as, 43 points. End up winning by 38 points. I mean, the series isn't over yet, and the Cavaliers still have a 2-1 series lead, and who knows, they might still win the playoffs, or excuse me, they might still win this series. But you got to think with the way that the Magic responded in front of their like home crowd. I mean, you have to think that the home fans were a huge reason, why the Magic just had this fantastic offensive display here.
Yeah, it was impressive to see what home cooking can do for a team that's struggling. Yeah, and this is something that I really expect you to give a much deeper insight to, because this is your series. This is uh, your guys just an hour away from where you are. Uh, so yes, it's now a series for that series. It's not the same thing as far as the Knicks 76ers that we were just talking about, where it needs to be 2-2 for it to be a
Mhm.
series. Now it's a series, especially in the way that the Magic were able to just pick them apart. That
Yeah.
creates more excitement for that series to go 5 or 6 games. We'll see what happens in game four. If it does wind up going 2-2, oh, we're in for a fun last 3 games of that series.
Oh, absolutely. And what's also really interesting here, Ed, is that if you look at the way that the Magic have, played so far, what has been their biggest issue until Game Three? It was offense. The offense played horrible. Defense, though, played great. And if you look at the defense, we've held the Cavs to under 100 points, in these through the first 3 games. So defensively, we're locking these guys up. It's just that we couldn't figure out our shit on the other end of the court. But now it seems like we have. But I think naturally, my biggest worry right now is, okay, did we waste all of our offensive firepower in one game? It's like, and this is sort of a topic change because it's a different sport, but it reminds me of the Gators baseball team against LSU, game two of the College World Series Finals, when we scored 24 runs, and then the next game, we only score a measly, 4 runs, and we get destroyed at 18-4. So it does kind of leave me a little worried that we wasted all of our offensive firepower in one game. But I'm not too worried because, as I said, the home crowd certainly helped us. And all season, we haven't been a great road team, but we have been a great home team. And I think, like I said, with the way that our defense has been playing, if we found that offensive spark, then Cleveland, you better look out.
Yeah, and if Orlando can make the adjustments that they made apparently at halftime of this last game, where they came out in the third quarter and wound up being 35-16, that is going to make a huge difference in the outcome of this series.
Yeah. Ed, I want to kind of go back to what we were talking about before, as far as being like the face of the NBA. I think both you and I are in agreement that Nikola Jokic for now is the face of the NBA. But do you think that Paolo Banchero could be the face of the NBA soon, or is he held back by the market he's playing in?
I think there's a better chance of Wimby becoming the face of the NBA before anybody else.
I won't argue against that. You want to
He's
talk about?
he's a
Sorry, go ahead.
one person wrecking crew at, out of playing for San Antonio. His defensive efficiency just in this first season, and really in the back half of the first season, because of him getting bulked up to handle the grind of an NBA season. He didn't do as much of uh, the sit out to feel better, the load management as some of these other stars out there do, because he's a younger guy and he knew that he needed to be in there and get what it felt like to have that toughness just rain down on him night after night after night, so he knows what level he needs to get to getting into this second season. And his efficiency went up tremendously over the second half of the season because of that. So when you start to see him show up on more primetime games, more TNT spots, more uh, Christmas games, more All Star games, you are going to see him become more of a likable figure, more of a guy that can be that fun face, that excited to be there in the NBA face, rather than the man, I'm mad that the officials were not good to me, man. Instead of seeing that night after night in every press conference that LeBron does.
What's crazy, Ed? I mean, you talk about his efficiency. What's really crazy is that Wemby was nominated for Defensive Player of the Year finalist as a freaking rookie. When was
Yep.
the last time that happened? Michael Jordan, maybe?
No, it took Michael a couple of years to get the defensive prowess in. I want to say it was somewhere around Moses Malone or Magic Johnson.
Jeez. I mean, listen, you're a special generational talent when you get nominated for a big time award like that in your first season. Like, there's no other way around it.
And keep in mind, that's also an award that LeBron has never won.
True. He has gotten plenty of all defensive NBA teams, but he has never won Defensive Player of the Year. And at this point, especially with how old he is, there's no way in hell he's going to win it now. But that's all. That's about all we have, folks. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Total Sports Talk. I'm David Street. This is my co-host Ed Smith, guys. We are a product of American Daily Press, aka ADP. Check them out. Plenty of other great shows to talk about. Brita Unfiltered, Quirks of Creation, Guys Like Us, which actually used to be Guys Night, but they recently switched their name to Guys Like Us. So check them out and check out all the great work that ADP does. But until then, guys, we are rounding third and headed for home.